Hey guys, what's up? It's Claire and welcome back to Bookmas. So you're probably like, okay, you have not been uploading this entire month. What do you mean Bookmas? It is December 13th. Yes, welcome to my version of Bookmas. I realized in this world we have creative freedom. Basically, I needed a little bit more time to prepare for Bookmas, and so I decided to do December 13th through the 25th instead of doing the 1st through the 12th. Next year, we'll probably get back on the normal schedule, but I really wanted to participate in Bookmas this year, so I put a poll on my YouTube, and you guys said to do Bookmas still, even though it's a little bit late, so here we are. As you can tell by the title, today we're going to be going through 24 books I read in 2024. Some of these are going to be books I loved, a few of them are going to be books I kind of liked, and then a couple of them are going to be books that I really didn't like, and we're going to talk about them today. 2024 was a big reading year for me. I have not met my goal yet for reading. 2024 has been kind of a big year of reading for me because it's the first full year that I've been like an avid reader. I really got back into reading towards the end of last year. So throughout this year, I've been consistently reading. Now I'm still working on my reading speed, and obviously I've been through a couple of book slumps this year as my mental health has been kind of all over the place, but we read as many books as we could, and we're gonna go through 24 of those. Also, disclaimer, a lot of these books are gonna be fantasy or romance, if not all of them. I think there's a few thrillers in here, but I'm really looking next year to expand my horizons, read some more like general fiction, more thrillers. Just bear with me throughout this video because this year I was really focused on reading a lot of the books that like I hadn't gotten to yet, books that are super popular that I feel like I needed to read as like staples in my collection. Anyways, the first book is the first book I actually finished this year, and that was A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. This book was incredible, and honestly, this entire series has left such an impact on me. I am so excited for the next book in the series, and I genuinely adore the series so much. Like, it's probably my favorite book series I've ever read. This is the thickest book in the series, and it did take me a minute to get into it. Now, I did read it pretty quickly, I want to say. I feel like everyone knows ACOTAR at this point, but this is the first book in the series to not focus on the initial main character, Feyre, and her love story with... That's a spoiler. Sorry. And her main love story, it starts to go into her sister Nesta's life and really focus on her and her character development. Really, the only bone I had to pick with this book was I feel like it could literally have been cut in half. Like, no joke. It was a little bit Groundhog Day for me. I feel like there was a lot of repetitiveness in the storyline, but it does eventually get somewhere, and I feel like the character arc in this book specifically was just so amazing, and I really enjoyed this. And then we have two more Sarah J. Maas books. Bear with me, and then we will move on from this author. But the next book that I read this year was Sarah J. Maas, The Assassin's Blade. I chose to read the Throne of Glass series, starting with Assassin's Blade, and then going in publishing order after that. I feel like it was the best way to read the series for me, and I honestly really enjoyed Assassin's Blade. It is a collection of novellas, so every story moves pretty quickly in there. I feel like everyone knows Throne of Glass, so I'm not really going to talk too much about what the plot is in this book, but I really did enjoy this series so far. I have not finished it. I literally started reading it in like February, January, and then I put a major DNF once I got to Queen of Shadows. And my goal is to finish it next year, like the whole series, but we're working on that. We will get to it, okay? I promise. It's not that I didn't enjoy Throne of Glass, I just feel like going straight from ACOTAR into Throne of Glass was just a lot for me, and hopefully I can pick it up again soon, but Assassin's Blade was amazing. I think I would honestly rate this book a 5-star. Then we have Crown of Midnight, which is book number... I can't even remember which one in the series this is. This is book number 3 in the series. Like I said, I'm still on Queen of Shadows, so I have not finished the series yet. This was my other favorite book of the series, so I absolutely loved Assassin's Blade, and then Crown of Midnight. Literally adored this book. This is a 5-star read for me. I sped through this. I think I read it in like a day. I did try to tab the book, and I think that we successfully failed at that because I'm not a big tabber. Like, I never really know what to annotate in a book. Anyways, I really enjoyed this book as well. Not much else to say about that. The next book I read was actually on my Kindle, and I do not have a physical copy of this one, but I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. So this is a like mystery thriller series, and I have been really enjoying it. I have read all of the series so far. I actually think the series might be over, but I did read the whole series this year, and I absolutely enjoyed all of the books. I will say like the first one was the best of the series, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit. I think I rated this one pretty highly when I first read it because it was one of the first thrillers that I have read, and I really did enjoy it. I feel like this is just a really popular thriller. Frida McFadden writes books that I feel like I can literally devour in like one sitting. Her books are super fast paced and also really easy to read. They're not super crazy and analytical, so I really enjoy reading them, and whenever I need like a good palate cleanser, I feel like Frida McFadden books are pretty good for that. Next, we have Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is my first Ali Hazelwood book, and I know that there is like a preferred reading order for her books, but I honestly didn't know that until after I had already read this one. This book basically follows a girl named Elsie, and she is a adjunct professor, I believe, at a university, and basically she doesn't make a lot of money doing that, so at night she does kind of partake as like a fake girlfriend on this like app or something. That's kind of like her side gig, and she does end up with one client that's pretty consistent, and he basically introduces her to his family. He's like, this is my girlfriend, yada yada, but outside of hiring her for family events, they don't really spend much time together. The client does have an older brother named Jack, and this is where the plot comes in. If I remember correctly, I want to say Elsie and Jack are kind of competing for the same job, or no, wait. Actually, it might be Elsie is trying to be promoted at MIT, which is the school that she works at, but Jack is also involved in her promotion. It's got something to do with that. And like I said, Jack is the older brother. They have conflicts of interest when it comes to physics, and there is just a couple of things in the plot that kind of make you want to hate Jack at first. It is an enemies to lovers romance, but I will say it was really fun, and I honestly really like the depth to the storyline. Next, we have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and this book was incredible. I did annotate this one. I absolutely loved this book. 5-star read for me. The book basically follows a woman named Clementine who inherits her late grandmother's apartment, and she finds that some days when she walks into her apartment itself goes back 7 years in time. To the exact date, it travels back 7 years. And there is a man who, I'm not going to say the name because I feel like this spoils a part of the story, but there is a man from the past who is currently living in the apartment at that time, and they kind of cross paths because obviously she's traveling back in time to when he lived there and she's living there, so they're at the same place, and it's kind of hard to explain. But she really does develop a good friendship from this man of the past, but sometimes she'll go to bed or she'll leave the apartment, she'll come back or wake up, and she is back in modern time. So she's never really able to fully discover who this man is. And then it goes from there, and I promise it is so worth reading. My next read was probably my most disappointing read of 2024, and that was, and you guys are gonna hate on me for this one, but Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I feel like everyone loves this book. I have literally been in the bookstore and heard people telling their friends about this book and being like, it's such an amazing book, it's so good. I did not really enjoy it that much. I felt like it was very tedious. It didn't really hit the same for me as it does for a lot of people. It is a romantasy duology. I have not read the second book yet. It is on my TBR for 2025, but this book in particular just really didn't hit home for me. This book basically follows two authors who are working for the same newspaper, and it is during wartime in this book, so they are reporting on the war. The main character of this book, Iris, actually has a brother who is fighting in the war, so she writes him letters on a daily basis and tucks them underneath her closet door. Little does she know that these letters actually are vanishing and going straight into the hands of her biggest rival at the newspaper that she works at. She does soon discover that it is not her brother who she is talking to, but she is not aware that the man that she is talking to is this said rival, and everything spirals from there. It is a really great plot, and I will say it is a fun book to read, but it was a bit disappointing just because I had heard such raving reviews about it. I will be reading the second book though, and I am excited to see what comes out of it. The next book I have is Flawless by Elsie Silver, and Elsie Silver has become one of my favorite romance authors this year. I absolutely adored this book, and this is the first book in the Chestnut Springs series. I feel like everyone has read the Chestnut Springs series, but they are cowboy romances. Something I really like about Elsie Silver's books is that they kind of have like the perfect amount of spice in them. Now, there's been a few that I have read so far that I'm like, okay, we're good on the spice. But I feel like there is more of a plot line in these books. I don't love books that are more spice than plot, so I really do enjoy Elsie Silver's books. This book follows Rhett, which is a bull rider in the Chestnut Springs universe, and basically he has a bad reputation, and in order to clean up his reputation, they stick him with his daughter for the summer. Or not the summer, the rest of the season. I'm assuming that's like the bull riding season. I don't really know what that is. Basically, he has to supervise her full time, and then he decides that he needs a babysitter to help with this since he is still working and partaking in his career. And that is where Summer Hamilton comes in, and of course the rest is history. He's attracted to her, it's a love story, yada yada. I do recommend it. It's really cute. I love a good cowboy romance. The next book that I'm going to be talking about today is The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden, and I didn't want to do another Frida McFadden book just because, sorry my cat. You guys want to meet Vader? He hates being picked up. I didn't want to do another Frida McFadden book in this video just because she's not one of my favorite authors, but it is like a book that I'll read here and there. But I did read this book the other night, and oh my gosh, I was in shock. The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden is genuinely probably the book that captivated me the most this year and had the biggest plot twists like ever. I genuinely did not guess what was going to happen. I thought I had a pretty good idea because I feel like I can typically guess like what's going to happen in a book pretty much halfway through. This book had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. It is so, I don't really know how to describe the plot without spoiling it for you. It is a dual timeline book. It follows a man and a woman. This woman is going through her dating journey. This man, it takes place in the past when he was in high school, and it follows like a series of murders, a couple of crazy events that happen in each of their lives, and then eventually the stories will intertwine together. It is so worth the read. Next, we have another book that I actually did own a physical copy of, but I no longer do because I genuinely did not enjoy it that much, and that is Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I know this is going to get a lot of backlash. This is a very controversial take, but I did not enjoy this book in the slightest. I don't really want to talk about this book too much, and I'm not going to lie, I read through it pretty quickly because I wanted to just get it over with. And just because I don't enjoy a book doesn't mean that it's a bad book. It's just not a book for me. But if you've read this book, you might be able to figure out why I thought it was just extremely cringy and unenjoyable. And I decided to DNF the rest of the series because I just genuinely didn't enjoy it that much. I have heard that it gets better, but I just have so many books that I want to read and so many books that really draw my attention and series that I want to finish that I actually am enjoying that I just decided to DNF that entire series. My next book is one of my favorite books of the entire year, and that is Abby Jimenez, Just for the Summer. If you guys don't know, Abby Jimenez is one of my favorite authors literally ever, not even just romance, but in general. I was blessed enough to be able to actually meet her earlier this year, and she was just like the sweetest thing. I honestly want to support her in everything that she does, buy every single book she ever writes, if not multiple copies, just because she is just incredible. This book follows a woman named Emma and a guy named Justin, and basically Emma is on Reddit one day just scrolling and she finds Justin's post, and it is a post basically talking about how every time that he dates someone, they find their one true love after dating him. So it's kind of like his curse, and Emma says, hey, I actually have the same curse. Both of us are dealing with the same thing. Because they both believe that they have this curse of everyone finding their one true love after being with them, they decide, hey, maybe we can break this curse if we date each other. And I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but Emma ends up moving to the same town that Justin lives in order to date him for the summer because she's a travel nurse and she gets to pick where she goes. And so she decides to move to where Justin lives and date him to hopefully break the curse. Ultimately, I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but Emma does move to where Justin lives just for the summer, just to date him and hopefully break the curse once they decide to break up. I think there's a deal in there where they have to like kiss once, go on 5 dates or something like that to make it officially dating, and then afterwards they're hoping that they find each other's soulmates. Anyways, this book is just really cute, and something else about this book that I really liked is that it does touch on some difficult topics, such as a toxic relationship with a mother. There was a lot of things in this book that I felt like I could relate to in different ways, and this book, honestly, it made me cry. But it was incredible. 5-6-star read for me. I absolutely loved this. My next book is my most recent read of the year, and that is going to be Light Lark by Alex Astor. And this book, wow, I actually really enjoyed it. This book has been on my radar for a while, and it did go like viral on Book Talk last year, but for some reason I just never picked it up until recently. I was really in a fantasy mood, and I read through this in like 3 days, which I know is like, to some people, not super fast, but I had other things to do, guys, so I read this pretty quickly. I could not put this book down. It basically follows an island, Light Lark, that appears every 100 years, in which the rulers from all of the different realms have to come to the island and almost compete to break the curses that were put on their island. You would think that they would be competing, but really you learn that there's just a couple of like trials and tribulations that they have to take in order to break the curses on all of their islands. It focuses on a main character, Isla, who is a ruler of one of the realms, and it is a romantasy. There is a love triangle in this, but it really does focus more on the fantasy element rather than the romance element, and honestly, I really enjoyed this book. The next book that I am going to be talking about today is another Elsie Silver book, and it is Wild Love by Elsie Silver. So I know I haven't finished the Chestnut Spring series, but I have been keeping up with the Rose Hill series. This series is her newest one that she is still actively publishing and came out earlier this year. Just for a quick summary, I'm going to read the back really quickly. It says, It says Forbes may have labeled Ford Grant the world's hottest billionaire, but all he cares about is escaping the press and opening a recording studio in gorgeous small town Rose Hill. Something that comes to a screeching halt when he ends up face to face with a young girl who claims he's her biological father. Now he spends his days balancing business with parenting a sullen 12-year-old, all while trying to desperately keep his hands the hell off his best friend's sister, Rosie Belmont. And the rest is history. When I tell you this is such a good cowboy romance, I genuinely enjoyed this book, and I think I read it in like a day. Elsie Silver's books are just so easy to devour, and if you want a quick, refreshing read that doesn't require so much brain power that you're literally like having to reread a page over and over to understand what's going on, Elsie Silver is for you. Next up, we have another author that I discovered this year, which is Lynn Painter. I read The Love Wager by her, and guys, this book was so good. I read this book in like a day, and something about Lynn Painter's writing is just so bingeable. I feel like her books literally require no brain power at all, and you will just speed through a book so quickly. It's under 300 pages, and I honestly really liked the humor in this book. I felt like it was genuinely funny, genuinely interesting, and I don't really connect to YA romances as much as I do adult romances, just because I am married and I'm older now, and being in my 20s, I feel like a book like this just really, like, it made sense. It basically follows this woman named Hallie, who is a bartender. She ends up bartending a wedding, and funny enough, she actually ends up hooking up with the bride's brother at the wedding. But after their crazy night, she actually ends up belly crawling out of his room, literally ghosting him, leaving, being like, I'm never gonna see this man again. And then she actually finds him on a dating app. They basically come up with a little love wager. They're saying, hey, are you gonna find the one first or am I? And they're basically each other's wingman. Every time that a date goes wrong, they decide to go get tacos and hang out afterwards. And eventually the lines become blurred when they decide to be each other's fake date to a wedding. Next we have Funny Story by Emily Henry, and this is my second Emily Henry book. I do plan to hopefully read the rest of her books in the coming year, and she does have a new release coming out in 2025. This book follows main characters Daphne and Miles. Basically, Daphne and Miles are both in relationships. They're living with their partners. Daphne is actually engaged to be married with her partner. And then each of their partners ends up leaving them for each other, if that makes sense. So ultimately, Miles and Daphne decide, hey, you know what? It makes sense. Let's just move in together. We each need a roommate. And things escalate from there. I did enjoy this book. I want to say I gave it like a 3-star because it After reading Happy Place by Emily Henry, I really had super high expectations for this book, and I will say Happy Place is just so up there that it's really hard to even raise the bar from that. This book was a little bit disappointing for me just because, in my personal opinion, because a lot of people really loved this book, I did not feel like Miles and Daphne really had much chemistry. I feel like as friends, they definitely had a really great friendship, but it almost felt like the romance came out of nowhere. But like I said, that's just my own personal opinion, and I still really did enjoy the book, and I'm still going to continue to read Emily Henry, and I love her writing. Next up, we have another thriller, and this book was freaking amazing. We have The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I actually read this book for my book club, so I did pretty good at annotating it, but honestly, I really enjoyed this book. It sucked me in, and I will say there was a little bit of a lull in my interest in this, so I did listen to some of it on audiobook in order to pique my interest again. I did enjoy listening to the audiobook of this. I liked the person who was voicing the main character. It says, Casey Fletcher, a recently widowed actress trying to escape the streak of bad press, has retreated to the peace and quiet of her family's lake house in Vermont. Armed with a pair of binoculars and several bottles of bourbon, she passes the time watching Tom and Catherine Royce, the glamorous couple living in the house across the lake. They make for a good viewing. A tech innovator, Tom is powerful, and a former model, Catherine is gorgeous. One day on the lake, Casey saves Catherine from drowning, and the two strike up a budding friendship, but the more they get to know each other and the longer Casey watches, it becomes clear that Catherine and Tom's marriage isn't as perfect as it appears. When Catherine suddenly vanishes, Casey immediately suspects Tom of foul play. What she doesn't realize is that there's more to the story than meets the eye, and that shocking secrets can lurk beneath the most placid of surfaces. So, reading that actually jogs my memory. This book genuinely went in a completely different direction than I thought it was going to. When I tell you that I thought one thing and then it was like actually the complete opposite, I mean that. This book is very interesting and it is good, but it was very out of pocket. The next book is one that I also read for my book club, and it was on the Kindle this year, and that is This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. And like I said previously, just because I didn't enjoy a book doesn't make it a bad book, but when I say that this book was the worst book that I read this year, I mean that wholeheartedly. I did not enjoy this book whatsoever. It follows, I don't even have the book to like reference character names, but it basically follows a girl, she's into her best friend's brother, and the best friend has this major secret that she's keeping, and all I'm saying is that it's very anticlimactic and very dramatic for no reason. That's all I'm going to say. I literally rated this a half a star. Next up, we have Caraval, which is by Stephanie Garber, and this series is one that I really wanted to start. It's super easy, like super quick, easy to read, and it is a YA fantasy. Caraval basically centers around I want to say yearly competition on an island. The competition is called Caraval, and the grand prize is one wish. Basically, this follows Scarlett and her journey through the Caraval competition. It's actually a really captivating book. I definitely did enjoy this one. There's a lot of twists, there's a lot of elements to the story, and I would recommend this if you're trying to get into fantasy and not really into like the romantasy element of things. There is, I want to say, like a hint of that in there, but genuinely it was almost nothing. Next, we have A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston, and this is the second Ashley Poston book that I have read. I believe she has 3 out, and she has one coming out in 2025 that I'm excited about. I will say this book is not nearly as incredible as The 7-Year Slip in my opinion, but I did enjoy the plot. I felt like the storyline was there, it was just the execution wasn't the absolute best. A Novel Love Story follows main character Elsie, and basically Elsie is a bookish girl. She has her favorite book series, and she decides that she's going to go up to a cabin for her yearly friend trip, and they're going to read this book series like they do every year, but all of her friends cancel on her, so she decides to go alone. On the way to the cabin, her car breaks down, and funny enough, she actually ends up stuck in the town of her favorite book series. Because the author actually passed away before finishing the book series, Elsie is responsible for helping to move the story along and get the story to be able to finish and have its happy ending. I want to say I rated this book a 3-star because it wasn't bad, it wasn't great. I didn't really sit and think about it for much afterwards, but I did enjoy reading it. Next, we have Done and Dusted by Lila Sage, and this book honestly really surprised me. I did not think I was going to enjoy this book because every time I had gone to the bookstore and I had picked it up and opened to a page, like quite literally right now, it is just spice. And I honestly, like I said earlier, I don't love a book that is entirely spice. I like a good mix of a plot spice book. But I actually did really enjoy this one, and it is super spicy, so if you're not really into that, I wouldn't recommend reading this one. This one follows Emmy, who is a horseback rider. She actually has an accident falling off of a horse and decides to take a break from horseback riding and come back to her hometown. When she gets to her hometown, she runs into Luke, which is her older brother's best friend, and if you can't tell by the cover, the rest is history. Basically, it's kind of like a mix of like a forbidden romance, but not really. Definitely a cowboy romance, and if you like Elsie Silver, I feel like you would like this book. Next up, we have the one and only Fourth Wing, and yes, I did invest in the special edition with the sprayed edges. I did not read this book until like a month or two ago. When I tell you that it is one of those books that I wish I had read sooner and can't believe that I let sit on my bookshelf for so long, I genuinely mean that. This was a 5-star read for me. I see all the hype. I totally get why everyone was talking about it, especially last year. It was like the book of the year or something. Fourth Wing follows the main character, Violet Sorrengail, and her time at Basgiath War College, which she is a dragon rider. This is a dragon fantasy, super fun, super interesting. There's a bit of romantasy in there. There's also a bit of enemies to lovers in this book, which is like one of my favorite tropes. I don't want to spoil too much, but this book is definitely worth the read, and I honestly feel like it was a pretty easy book to get into. At first you're kind of like, okay, why is this going on for so long? But it speeds up. It gets good, I promise. And the third book in this series actually comes out next year, so I had to read this one. Hopefully I'll have Iron Flame finished by the end of this year. Number 22 is going to be The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, and I'm including this book in here because I feel like this was a pretty average romance. I want to say I rated this one like a 3-star, just a super quick read. I read this in one sitting. It follows main characters Olive and Ethan. Olive is actually a twin, and at her twin's wedding, everyone gets food poisoning, everyone gets sick and hospitalized, and so now there's this honeymoon that somebody has to take because it's non-refundable. So basically, Olive takes her sister's place at the honeymoon, and they say, hey, you guys have to pretend to be in love because this is supposed to be a honeymoon, and that is how we got all these discounts on this trip and all this crazy stuff. So the two of them have to pretend to be in love, and they go on this 10-day vacation together, and you know, it is a little bit of like a rivals to lovers, enemies to lovers story. I really did enjoy it. Super quick, easy read, 3-star. And then my 23 and 24 books are both by the same author, and this is the best series that I have read this year. We have Powerless and Reckless by Lauren Roberts, and my favorite book that I read this year was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This book has left such an impact on me. I genuinely love this book. Of all the books that I read this year specifically, this book has changed my life in so many ways. It is a YA fantasy, and at first I was a little bit skeptical. I wasn't sure if I was going to love it or hate it, but I freaking loved it. I also got to meet Lauren, and she signed all of my copies in the series so far, so I am really excited for Fearless, which is the third book in the series to come out next year. I think this is my most anticipated read for 2025. I'm just gonna read the little blurb inside of the book so that you guys can get an idea without any spoilers. So it says, the elites have possessed powers for decades, gifted to them by the plague, while those born ordinary are just that, banished from the kingdom of Ilia, and shunned from society. No one knows this better than Peyton Gray, an ordinary posing as a sidekick to blend in with the elites. But when she unwittingly saves one of Ilia's princes, Kai Azar, she's thrown into the purging trials, a brutal competition showcasing the elite's powers. If the trials and the opponents within them don't kill her, the prince she's fighting feelings for will, if he discovers what Peyton is, completely ordinary. So, there is a bit of a love triangle in here. I love a good love triangle. I feel like this is like the first book that I've read that I really enjoyed the love triangle in, but the love triangle really makes the second book. And when I tell you that Reckless was also amazing. I prefer Powerless, and I feel like Reckless was just like the bridge between what's going to be the third book and what is the first book. I feel like this gave us a lot of detail. It prepared us for what's to come. And the cliffhanger at the end of this book, girl, It's so worth the read. I literally loved it. All right, and now after sitting here and filming for an hour, we are done. That is 24 books I read in 2024. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a big thumbs up and hit subscribe below. Also, go ahead and comment any books that you guys think that I should read in 2025, books that you would recommend based off of this, books that you would recommend to kind of branch out in my genres and read some things that I haven't read before. You can also follow me on my other social medias if you guys want to remain involved, become besties. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for day 2 of Bookmas. Bye!